40.
You couldn't see me on this side, Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Jill Castellano. I'm doing quite well. I am a PCT at Varsity Lakes Middle School and the Vice President of the Teachers Association of Lee County. I have no time constraints, but the sooner we leave, the better. Just because it's my birthday, normally I wouldn't care. We've noted who's missing from the TALC side, no elephants, and my expectation is make progress.
Hello, I am Anna Witten. I am a third grade teacher at Colonial Elementary as well as TALC secretary. I am doing fine, but I definitely am feeling quarter one overwhelmedness. I have no time constraints beyond the end of this meeting. We have noted who's missing, no elephants, and let's make some progress.
Hello, my name is Samantha Hauer. I'm a full-time PCT at Harns Marsh Middle School. I'm doing fine. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted, no elephants, and I'd also like to make progress.
Hi, I'm Shay Pearson. I'm a testing coordinator at Island Coast High School. I'm doing fine. Missing has been noted, no elephants, and I'd like to make progress.
Hello, I'm Amy Johnson. I am a 6th grade language arts teacher at Marion Middle School. I am doing well, no time constraints, missing has been noted, no elephants, and expectations to make progress.
Hello, my name is LaShonda Hutchins Cologne. I'm a full-time math coach at Franklin Park Elementary. I have no time constraints. The missing is noted. I have no elephants, and I will make progress.
Hi, my name is Iris Grimaldi. I am a full-time school social worker with student welfare and attendance. I'm doing well. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted, no elephants, and my expectation is to make progress.
Good evening, I'm Christina Sterrett. I am a full-time kindergarten through 5th grade art teacher at Tortuga. I'm doing very well tonight. Happy birthday, Jill. No time constraints other than the end of the meeting, and missing has been noted, no elephants, and expectation I'll stick with make progress.
Good evening, my name is Bob Scopatola. I teach math at 3 Oaks Middle School, and I've got no time constraints as long as we are done at 7 so that the Red Sox can win at 7:07. Who's missing has been noted. Elephants, none. Expectations is to make progress, and happy birthday, Jill. And if you're 40, I think I have socks older than you.
I'm Mario Duristal. I'm over at Fort Myers, teach mathematics. I'm doing well, no time constraint. Missing's been noted, no elephants, and my expectations to make progress.
My name is Tara Sherman. I'm a full-time professional school counselor at Raymond C. Page Elementary. No time constraints, missing has been noted, no elephants, and expectation is to make progress.
Amy.
Oh, go ahead.
After all these years. Hi, I'm Robert Dodig. I am Executive Director of Human Resources. I'm well. I have no time constraints. We are missing Rachel Gould and Shanna Fletcher. I think Rachel may end up being here. I'm not sure. What's next? No elephants, and I expect us to also make progress.
Hi, I'm Will Rothenberg. I'm Director of Compensation and Labor Relations for the district. I'm doing well. No time constraints. I would add Kim Hutchins to that list. No elephants and expectation to make progress.
Good evening. My name is Heather Leonard. I'm the Director of Staffing and Talent Management and Human Resources. I'm doing well today. I don't have any time constraints. Would like to be done at our 7 o'clock ending time. I believe the missing have already been noted. I don't have any elephants, and my expectations are to make progress.
Good evening, my name is Amy Desamore. I'm just fine. Do have one time constraint. I'm going to have to step out at 4:30 to do a presentation at one of the advisory committees, and then I will be back as soon as that's over. Missing's been noted, no elephants, and my expectations are that we make progress.
My name is Carl Burnside. I'm doing fine. No time constraints as long as we get to watch, get out in time to watch the Tampa Bay Rays. Just joking. I don't really care that much. I just want to say it. I'm a Marlin fan. So, Marlin, I'm a Miami guy. That's right. That's right. Who's missing has been noted. No elephants. Expectations make progress.
Jessica Duncan, Executive Director for Student Services. I'm doing fine. I have no time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants. My expectations are to make progress.
Hello, my name is Christine Schroed. I'm doing okay today. Time constraints, I just have to be done by 7 tonight. Missing have been noted. I do not have any elephants, and same expectation is to make progress.
Good evening, I'm Ben Osman, Principal of Bayshore Elementary School. I'm all right. Time constraints, none. Missing noted. Elephants, none. And expectations make progress.
Good afternoon, I'm Bonnie McFarland. I'm the Director of Insurance and Benefits for the school district. I'm doing okay. No time constraints other than the end of the meeting at 7 o'clock. Missing is noted, no elephants, and expectations. I'd like to make some decisions.
Mike Eaglewood, Director of Financial Services. I'm doing great. No time constraints. Missing is noted. No elephants. Expectations. I'm going to say make decisions also.
I'm Suzette Rivera, the Assistant Director for Recruitment. I'm doing fine. No time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants, and my expectations is to also make some decisions tonight.
I'm Amy French, Coordinator of Professional Development. I'm doing well. I don't have any time constraints. You all noted who's missing. I don't have any elephants, and my expectations are I would like to see decisions to be made as well tonight.
I'm Amanda Guzman. I'm doing well today. No time constraints. Noted who's missing. No elephants. I just want to support you all in progress.
Okay, so last time we met, we had come up with some options.
I think it pertained to COVID, but I saw some MOUs after that, so we need to go through these. Okay.
I wasn't sure, I know the email hasn't gone out yet, but I wasn't sure if TALC wanted to give an update on the ratification of the FY22 COVID MOU.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that, Will. Thank you for reminding me. We held the electronic ratification Wednesday and Thursday of last week. And at the close of polls, the MOU ratified with a very strong 82% yes vote. And so now it goes to the board. I'm just not sure when.
We're hopeful, sorry, Amy. Okay. We're hopeful on Tuesday night of next week. So that's what we're hopeful.
So do these options, these were not part of that MOU that we voted? Okay, so this is something different. Okay. So we had talked about the supplemental pay last week for classroom coverage. So we had, I believe, 6 options. And I'll quickly go through those. Will, do you want to present that language up there so we can, because some of it we're referring to like D1A and, do you remember what we were? Okay. So the first option was $50 an hour, payment to increase to $60 an hour during instruction that's missed that you have to do. So when you, instruction during missed planning time. Then we did a $60 increase to $75 per hour for instruction during missed planning for the semester. This was more on a daily, this was more for the semester. Number 2 was change the hourly rate plus pay the hourly rate plus $15 for coverage during planning time for secondary and special areas or special schools. I can't remember what that was. Number 3 was scratch 2 hours in D1A and say per semester. Scratch per semester in D1B. For D1A, increase the absence to $300 from $300 per day to $400 per day. This pertained to elementary school, I believe. Secondary and special centers, change the $50 to hourly rate plus $30. And the $60 to hourly rate plus $40. And this is for full coverage, and this is the daily coverage. And number 6, if you're doing prep during or lesson and grading for a teacher, then you're paid an hour at your hourly rate. Do we need to clarify any of these, change any of these, add anything? Jill?
The hourly rate like we're doing if you're taking over for the full job of the teacher. I just want to make sure that that was for each day that you're doing that, when you're taking over full responsibility, not just covering for one day that a teacher's out, if the position's open and stuff like that.
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
So that hourly, when you get paid, I keep Sorry, I forgot there was a microphone. So the hourly rate when you're taking over for the teacher, that's like per day. So if it's an open position or a person, you're filling in for a position that's open completely, it's an hour per day of planning. I just want to make sure that that's captured.
So here.
Okay.
An hour per day, right there. Yep. Anything else you want to add, change, modify? Do we want to test anything, go to straw design? You need to see the problem again?
Yeah.
Bring that over here.
So, I'm so sorry. If you can step one back, if you can read them off one more time.
We're going to scratch the 2 hours in D1A and scratch per semester in D1B. So in that language that was up on the board. In D1A, we're going to increase the pay from $300 a day to $400 a day. That pertains to elementary. In secondary and special centers, change the $50 per hour to their hourly rate plus $30. That's for the daily coverage. And then for the full coverage, and they're doing it for the long term for the semester, change that $60 to hourly rate plus $40. 30 and 40. And then 6, if you are doing the prep work, the lesson and the grading for a teacher, then you're paid an hour per day at your hourly rate. Any other clarifications, Kevin?
It's not really a clarification, it's more what's next, because I think at some point there was some debate about who was eligible as well.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure if we want to hash it all out before we create one grand straw design.
Okay.
Because eligibility is incredibly important, as we have elementary school specials teachers not currently involved, coaches not currently eligible but still doing their coaching stuff and their covering. And so I think, again, what we saw when we first wrote this language was, I don't think it was intent specific, and so there was some wiggle. And so I think as we move forward, we need to be as intent specific as possible, not necessarily every detail written down, but this is the intent of it, and if you are fulfilling the intent, you're eligible to get what's in this language as opposed to excluding. So, again, I don't know if we want to talk about that for a while and then do a grand straw design, or do this and then talk about who's eligible. I would, personally, I would prefer the eligibility discussion now because that kind of covers the rest of it.
Well,
one of the things that I would just point out, I know we had classroom and non-classroom instructional staff kind of highlighted there. If you turn to Appendix C of the contract, it's got positions split up by classroom, non-classroom, and special instructional. We had some conversation about that. I don't know if it was in a pre-meeting or caucus at some point though, and we're talking about ESE resource teachers fall under the classroom teacher job description. But for some of the other positions, I think that you mentioned, like coaches, reading specialists, those are in the non-classroom instructional, and then special instructional, I think, most everyone is familiar with in here in terms of SLP, OT, PT, nurse, those positions that we were discussing last year, but just as a reference point. And those are the job descriptions. It doesn't include every single job code, so there might be somewhere where there would be need for more discussion, like Kevin's mentioning.
Will, I just want to ask a clarifying question. Are you saying that any job description or any position listed in Appendix C under classroom and non-classroom is the intent of the language here? Or you're saying that there are further, in your mind, there should be further discussion and further carve-outs?
I was just calling attention to, I think that's where that language came from, and like Kevin was saying, when we had some of the conversation just before the school year started about the MOU, and what we were ready to discuss there, and drafting kind of this sample language for the bargaining team to discuss. I think that's kind of where we were thinking. I think since then we've had a lot of conversation, and so in terms of who fits in where and how that's going to all work out, I think we have a lot more story that should help inform that discussion. But again, that Appendix C can be used as a quick reference and is something that's already in the contract that might be a good thing to point back to later.
thank you, Will. Okay, so we decide what our next steps are here. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm gonna beat the drum one last time. So according to this, unless you're on the special instructional list, you would be eligible to get extra money for doing extra work.
Okay, I guess I'm seeking clarification because I want to be clear that I almost feel like we almost need to itemize exactly those other positions so we know exactly what we're talking about. I think there's some obvious ones that are easy, but if I was sitting here thinking, my response would be depending on if it was let's just say at a high school level, I had a reading coach who didn't have any teaching assignments. So then I would be less inclined to say if I had a reading coach filling in and they were not doing their other reading coach duties because they wouldn't be able to go into some of the classroom modeling, this classroom supports, things of that nature. So what I want, and I say I think they should get something extra. I would not necessarily say that would be the same. So let's just say hypothetically, let's just hypothetically say that it was going to be I forget one of the numbers, that $50, $40 more. So they were getting, if they were paying for a reading coach, and then hypothetically, if they could get not just the hourly salary regular, but then essentially their hourly rate plus $40, that means they're getting almost double their salary if they were not, especially if they're not still necessarily able to fulfill their duties. So I'm just thinking in terms of, if I was a teacher at that school, because I'm putting my teacher hat on, then I would wonder, can they actually get double their salary while they're filling in? I don't know. That's a hypothetical that I'm throwing out there. So I think that's when you mentioned earlier about identifying the positions, I think we almost need to call them out and itemize and list them. There are some that'll be easy, there'll be some that'll be difficult, then we can kind of then perhaps then get into some alignment after we list those. That's just my thinking. And my scenario is just a scenario for making sure that we don't get any unintended consequences, even from other members of the bargaining unit. And that's all I'm thinking about.
Tina, and then Anna.
All right, I would like just to pinpoint or clarify, and this seems tedious, but it needs to be done, because in years past, when I should have been eligible for this extra pay as an art teacher taking on extra students and extra classes, I have been excluded and told, no, I am not a classroom teacher, and so therefore I have not gotten the extra pay. So where it says classroom teacher under instructional, special instructional positions in Appendix C, I would like it spelled out there that the specialist teachers are music, PE, technology, so forth, that we are included in that group, please.
Anna.
So I just wanted to add a little bit of story to your scenario that we have had at my school site many teachers out. I know last 2 Fridays ago we had 16 teachers out, and we do not have substitutes. So our coaches, our literacy coach, our dean of students, our math coach, our reading specialist, they are very well planning and making intervention groups and intervention materials to be delivered, and they are doing that classroom coverage. In elementary it looks a little different because we have to cover the whole day, not just fill in for different, 84-minute periods of time. It's the whole day. And as a classroom teacher, we are really feeling it because we don't have the support to push in. We don't have the people coming in and giving us that support to work with small groups. Yes, they are providing materials and they are doing the planning for it, but now we're stuck in the position of trying to implement it with zero support. And I know that when I was speaking with my principal this past week, I know he's feeling it too, that our teachers are just exhausted because they want to push in, they want to be doing their reading interventions and their math interventions, and they may every day be in a new position, in a new grade level. Sometimes there's plans, sometimes there's not. I know sometimes they're trying to help one another out and rotate kind of in and out and share that coverage position. We have kind of started splitting classes and splitting students because we are just really feeling it at our school site. And I know through our conversations just on our team, it's pretty, the consensus is all there that this is a way more challenging year than last year. And we have more and more staff members out. We're all taking the brunt of it. And so You know, I do think maybe looking at this non-classroom list, it's not everyone on here, but I know in elementary, definitely our coaches and reading specialists, they're the ones that are pushing in.
Okay, and I think my scenario was a little different, because I was thinking in terms of a vacant reading position and a high school reading coach. And, you know, and to me, I think those are two different scenarios. So going back into my former elementary life, there were not as many ways to cover situations as there are in secondary. You know, and also you can break it up in pieces with planning periods. So what I was referring to was probably I probably did a poor job of it. I was thinking in terms of secondary. If I have a reading opening and my reading coach was filling it over an extended period of time, that's kind of in my mind, I was thinking just sort of like checking those type of parameters that could cause some angst amongst other teachers and the staff with extended type of things. And so that was sort of my, just being cautious and throwing out pieces so that we don't go, as I said before, those unintended consequences. Because one of the things I do believe, and we've talked about this, there has to be a structure. Like in secondary, one of the things we talk about is always the same people that volunteer to cover, and they honestly need to be compensated more. So that's, but in my mind, I'm just thinking of some of those other pieces, like we talked about the special teachers and the music PE and the things that they end up doing and not being part of it. We see that as I see that as a difficult piece, that there needs to be some type of plan. That's why I said about listing, so we have those outliers that we're aware of and perhaps put certain things in place. I was thinking of that long-term person that may be, because right now there's no one's applying for job openings. So I'm thinking about the vacancy coverages that we're experiencing, and there maybe need to be some systemic pieces put in place that keep it from getting way out there where that causes some angst among people on the staff.
Yeah.
Carl, thank you for clarifying. Anna wanted me to say thank you for clarifying. So, so the idea of paying, like for example, because that's one of the things that we are seeing at secondary is we have vacant positions, and you're right. If you have a vacant reading position, you may put your reading coach in there. That person's a licensed reading teacher. They know the curriculum. So that's why when I brought up the idea of paying them for an hour of planning, it was to recognize that that person is now planning to be the reading teacher because they have to write lesson plans, they have to input grades, they have to do all that, but they still have reading coach responsibilities. So there could still be meetings that they attend. They're planning for PLC. So if I take over for an open position, I get one planning a day. And that time is now the teacher's having to figure out, okay, I have these responsibilities that need to get done, plus all these classroom responsibilities. Something's being pushed outside of their contractual day. And for all teachers, we know work gets pushed outside of our contractual day. And so it's recognizing that that person now, because I know that as we say, they're doing two jobs at once, and I get it. If I'm supposed to push into a classroom and co-teach with someone, yes, that stuff gets put to the side. But as teachers and someone who's in one of those positions, the teachers who come to me for help still need my help. So if I can't go in and model with them, I still meet with them, I still work with them, I still do all the things that they need me to do. And so now again, that falls outside of someone's contractual day. So you're using the planning time that you might need to plan for that TBA position to go into as many classrooms as you can and work with those teachers, and then you're going home that night and you're doing all of the lesson plans for that TBA position. So there's a lot, when you're doing two jobs, because the teachers still go to their instructional leaders for a lot of support. That's just typical in a school. So you're still doing the two jobs, and then like in Tina's situation, when the PE teacher is absent and she says, okay, well, just combine all the PE and all the art into her classroom, now she's having to expand all of her work for that day to cover two different programs. And so it comes down to, and I know you've been doing it for a long time. I know a lot of us have been doing things for a long time, but it's getting to the point where teachers are just, it's becoming too much to do multiple jobs a day and be expected to do all of them at the same caliber.
So I think, Jill, you kind of answered my question partly there, but I wanted to just ask, because I know obviously, as we're bargaining around some of this language, we're in probably one of the worst situations that we have been in terms of the need for coverage. And, people are having high levels of absenteeism, a lot of uncertainty in terms of absenteeism, where one person's out for a couple of days and then another person's out for a couple of days. And I know a lot of what I have heard in labor management, both with TALC and SPALC, is it seems to be a little bit of, how often, how long. It's not necessarily the concern about the coverage. It's that, I'm constantly being asked to do duties that I'm not normally assigned, or I'm being asked to do duties that I'm not normally assigned for an extended period of time. And so I'm wondering, is that something that we can separate from the language of this? And as we're talking about it, and I don't know if we can, because it's so front and center for everyone right now, but wondering if that's a separate issue that maybe we could try to work on through labor management, if we could get the language here more or less where we're looking for, then we can go back and maybe work on, again, based on the advice of everyone in here, what should be happening. Should your PCT, or your reading specialist or someone else be constantly used for push-in service, or push-in coverage, or should they be left to do the things that, you hired them to do, and that, in the budget, it says that they're supposed to be doing in terms of providing services, to students based on a specific student need.
Kevin? I'm gonna let Jill respond.
So, and I think you're right. There may be two different issues here, because we're looking at the classroom coverage, but I still, like I said, I think the difficult thing is we have people who are performing two job duties, and in many cases, we all go back to let's be a team player, let's be a team player. It's just getting more and more difficult to be that team player, to pick up. And I tell people all the time, I don't even want to use Slack in the schools anymore, because between COVID, between just a teacher shortage, it's a matter of we're just all in dire straits and everyone's just trying to make the school day happen.
Add something, so your hand up. Oh.
I'm actually kidding.
Unless Will's gonna respond.
Just one of the things, and I, again, just kind of as a parallel to that, I think one of the things that came up with paras providing classroom coverage, when you can't find a sub, when you can't find a teacher to provide coverage, one of the things that we saw in looking at the numbers for last year was, in most cases, it was for no more than 30 days during the course of the year. Which even that is a lot, for a paraprofessional, for someone who's not a certified educator, to step in and take on that level of additional responsibility. What we did see, though, and obviously there's always the outliers, is there were a couple cases where it was 120 days of a para doing that. And kind of the question that came up, or the concern was, is that person still a para? After 120 days of being a classroom teacher, are you a classroom teacher? We're just not calling you that on paper and not treating you like that. And so I'm wondering, again, if kind of the same thing applies to this or to other situations where, you know, if you're gonna have me doing this for a prolonged period of time, like if I'm gonna be the math teacher for the entire semester, just call me the math teacher and we can move on. It's when one day I'm the social studies teacher, the next day I'm the English teacher, then I'm the math teacher, then I'm the PE teacher. It's hard to, you know, to know what to expect when you show up to work.
And I think for me, it's relatively simple. So if your school is staffed with a reading coach, your school needs a reading coach. And if your school is staffed with a reading teacher, it needs a reading teacher. If you're asking one person to perform both tasks, and I believe there are people out there who are covering long-term classes, who are coaches and things like that, who are asked to do both tasks. If you are doing both tasks, you are doing two jobs. Plain and simple, two jobs. I'm just gonna say something, and I don't mean any disrespect. We don't have minutes, because Will doesn't have a secretary. Will can't do two jobs. It's you know, so in a school, people are doing two jobs. And you know, it's just, it is what it is. They're two separate jobs. They're hired for a reason, separately. And I don't believe either one of them is unimportant, because I believe the coaches in this district work all day long and longer than their day doing their job as a coach. I also believe the reading teachers work all day, do what they need to do as a reading teacher, and do beyond. So if we have people who are double dipping like that and being asked to do two jobs, then I'm unsure why we're excluding them from extra compensation.
Okay, there's Tina and then Ralph.
I'm not sure if this needs to go under story or just as put out there, but I have had some of my reading coaches and some of my PCTs and so forth come and say, I am trying to do two different jobs, sometimes 3 and 4 jobs in one day, and they're not able to get it done. I had one young lady this morning come to me in tears saying, I can't get my real job done. I can't finish my position, what needs to be done in my position to service my kids. So as a clarifying question, under elementary A, let's see if I can read it. If an employee accepts temporary reassignment, I don't know that they were asked to take the temporary reassignment. I think they were voluntold to take it. So at any point, like the young lady that came to speak to me this morning, could she say, and I suggested that she do that, go to admin and say, I need X number of hours to get my things done, to be able to service my students, and ask them to find somebody else to do that position for the day, because it's her second job for the day. So as part of the story, maybe we need to put that in there that, you know, people are doing these 2 and 3 positions a day, and things are falling off the wayside that are not able to be done at nighttime.
Yeah, I always find myself sort of trying to organize things in my mind, and I think Jill and Will hit on this. I'm not trying to rhyme, but that does. Happy birthday, Jill. But we are talking about compensation for missed planning, and we're morphing into a discussion that needs to be had, that needs to be discussed, a very worthwhile discussion about covering for teachers all day and other things that, from me, you're not going to hear me say people shouldn't be compensated for doing work. So I'm all about that conversation, but I think I'm also about accomplishing something in bargaining, and I urge us to try to focus on missed planning, but also have that further conversation maybe on the next topic or whatever, whenever that becomes more relevant, because we're talking about compensating for missed planning. And this is only my second session with TALC, but we've taken up, at this point, almost all 4 hours discussing this, but getting into other areas. So I see Jill has her hand.
Jill and then Hannah.
So I think the reason why we kind of got in the weeds on this was because I know last week we made some edits, and when it first came out, it was just temporary reassignment. So we were looking at temporary reassignment in a larger way. And then last session, when we came back from caucuses, it was clarified that really our focus was to look at misplanning. So I know that, so I just want to say, I think that's why we kind of got into the weeds on this, and I do agree that that conversation needs to happen. I think one of the things that we need clarified from our team is about the situation of elementary specials, where you have a teacher covering, for example, whatever the amount of money is that is allocated for the teacher to be shared. So if you allocate 300 or whatever the amount is, I think what we needed clarification on to make a decision on anything concerning classroom coverage was around specials teachers, because we understand that if I'm out and Anna and Sam split my classes, there's an amount of money that is divided among the two of them. What we need clarification on is what happens when a specials teacher, like an art teacher, takes art and music that day because the music teacher's out and there's no one covering for them.
Or even art taking over.
Well, vice versa, yeah, any of them, but that's something that we wanted some clarification on, because in the past, like we've said, that's not happening. So we understand classroom, like 3rd grade, 5th grade, it's the specials we just want some clarification on.
Is that okay, Hannah?
So I think this is something that, again, when we were talking about some of this stuff and there was a request from academic services, you know, at the start of the school year to look at considering this in the MOU, part of the thought was that coverage at the elementary level is typically taking place, you know, on a grade level team. And so I think the thought was that the same would apply for specials as a team, so that if the art teacher is absent and the PE teacher is taking those kids that day, that in that situation, that, you know, that same $300 would be divided up among the other specials teachers. I think that's different from, you know, a 4th grade teacher is out, and so there's another class going to whatever that special is that day because, you know, those students have been split among the 4th grade teachers, which I think kind of captures the concern that you guys were talking about, that, you know, typically if you're having, you know, more students show up, you know, to your special because that grade level is missing someone, there's typically, you know, a para or someone else that's coming out to support them, the same as there might be otherwise. Or, you know, that's kind of a different impact than taking on an entire other special team member's, you know, workload for that day.
I just also wanted to kind of add to that conversation that even though we are talking about instruction during misplanning, how elementary teachers get paid for those additional students is still under instruction during misplanning. However, we may not miss our planning. And I thought that the first session that we were here, I had asked the question about being split evenly among 2, 3, or 4 employees. That would make that $300 split easier for payment instead of the current mystery mathematical formula that is based on the percentage of the absent teacher's total class enrollment, taking out, it's a big math problem. So I think I agree with you, Rob. We have 2 different situations, but it's hard to not get in the weeds when we know that there is such a large problem that we face each day.
I understand that. I'm trying to organize it in my mind, so forgive me But I wasn't here for the first session either, so, but thank you, and I agree with you.
Okay. Do you have any ideas for next steps then? Go ahead. Kevin?
Yeah, I think some of this, we have kind of commingled and combined, and so some bifurcation may be necessary. You know, because even though we are talking about like missed planning, it still talks about temporary reassignment, and you know what I mean? So like, for me, it's, maybe we need to do two separate options, right? The one option is if you're being asked to cover in secondary for a missed planning or in elementary for classroom split kids, that's all in of itself. And then we address eligibility and payment with that. And then the larger option, we move on and do separately as well. So, you know, I think the conversation has naturally blurred things together. And so I think it may be time to stretch them apart individually.
Did you want to add two more options to this list or combine some of these? What do you want to do?
I'm not sure I want to add any more options. Currently, I think there's going to be a request for clarification to my left.
I was just gonna ask, could we hear the options again? Because I wanna make a list of the ones that really relate to the topic, which is classroom coverage or the elementary coverage. So I'm just gonna ask if we can reread those and then we can make notes and then we can go up and take pictures of them because that's all we have.
The first option, oh, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, this pertains to what Joe was just mentioning. I don't know if we don't have minutes, but I'm just wondering if we have a rough draft so that we could look at these things. I know that Joe was saying, can we go up there and take pictures, but I'm just wondering, is there an easier way for us to be able to view it? I don't know if there's a rough draft of these options that we can post up there so we can see it. Or, I mean, I have a hard time seeing them from here. I don't know about the rest of you. I can't see those from here. And when you read 6 or 7 options, I have a hard time processing, when you're getting into specifics here, which option is which. So I just wish that we could just see them somehow, either up on the big screens up there, or maybe if we have a rough draft, maybe we could have it printed, we can look at it. Because I just have a hard time understanding these options by just hearing them.
If we want to just take like a 5-minute break, because Will's such an excellent typist, that's why he doesn't need a secretary. I'm just kidding. He's getting one. We can type them up quick and project them up there. Does that sound good? All right, so 5 or 10 minute break and then, perfect.
All right. We're gonna go ahead and resume. Will's going to display some options for us so we can all see them at once. Mr. Will, will you put the icons? Taking the Maven Beacon questions.
Not to brag, but I think I was like 65 to 85 words per minute. Accuracy, I can't promise. Is that not better? Or I was trying to give you the side by side of the two of them. I can.
Is that okay? Do you need to make it bigger? What do we need?
I can. It cuts off some of the side of this.
Could you stack one on top of the other? Can you put it that way?
Like top and, let me try. Switch back to the other one if you guys need.
Give me some time to read over these and let me know what you need us to do next. Okay, Rob, we'll go ahead and start.
Just for clarity, I believe, other than the originals that were presented, our management's option was, district's option was 2, and I think the rest were TALC, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think one was on.
One was ours.
Yes, one was off.
One was off. Yeah.
Anna?
I'd like to add a new option.
Okay.
Option 7, I would like to, let's see, 1A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, line 7, to take out 2, 3, or 4 employees and make that just say that the students are split evenly among a team or grade level. So that way we're not limited, if we're not splitting between 4 teachers or 3 teachers, if it's still split amongst the whole team, we're just taking that $300 and dividing it amongst how many ever teachers are absorbing those students, and we're not limiting it.
Yes.
Kevin?
I think with 7, I think what we're trying to kind of legislate so we don't have to litigate, the idea that the students are split evenly, therefore the pay is split evenly, that will avoid situations where teachers will say, hey, you know why Bob only got 1 kid? Because the administrator loves him, that's why I got 12, and Bob got just as much money for 1 as I got for 12. And so I think we need to kind of address that idea that the students that we are dividing, if we need to, are divided evenly among the people remaining on the grade level. That's the reasoning behind the even distribution of pay, as evenly as possible. Sometimes you get in a situation where somebody has to have 1 more, but that probably rotates around and everybody gets their turn with 1 more. But I think that was kind of what Anna was saying, and I think that's the legislate versus litigate, so we don't get 6 months down the road and we're arguing over that as well.
So did you want to change something on this 7? Did you want to add the word students? Is that what you're saying? And then,
just to clarify that evenly piece, if there happens to be in the elementary, like maybe there's a cluster of 3 all-Y kids, but one of the teachers on that team feels comfortable with those students, that it doesn't have to be even, but maybe that's the best fit for the kids? Or are we looking for just even?
I think for every instance that there's one of those, there's the instance on the other side. You know what I mean? And it's difficult because there are buildings where things happen very appropriately, and Carl says this often, and I believe in this statement, that we are negotiating for the extremes. And so places where things seem reasonable and work reasonable, there's even no need for this language because it probably works reasonably well. But places where there's no reasonableness, there's definitely, and so again, I think I need to strike the balance of what the intent is, because again, if we can all agree on intent, then implementation is much easier. But, for everyone where there's that kind of, you're right, I have a better relationship with these 3 and it'll make an easier day for everybody, but I don't have confidence that given 100 and something buildings that that's going to be genuinely applied across the district.
Wait, you want to clarify, we do not need to change what's up here.
Well, I'll let Will talk.
I was going to bring up something different that might be better left out. Trying to figure out, looking at the existing contract language, how we're going to incorporate some of that in, and wondering the question about non-classroom instructional staff. We don't have the same, I think, carve-out language that we do for special instructional staff, where we say that they will not be required to provide instructional coverage, and so I wasn't sure if that conversation needs to take place now, or if that's a separate thing that we can address after we get some resolution on what you were just mentioning.
If the question is special instructional eligible, I think the answer is no, because they're not eligible for the other one. So, again, I think we determined that they perform a vital function and sometimes a function in kind of an acute manner, and so they need to have that flexibility and freedom.
And I was thinking more for the non-classroom instructional staff. Again, looking at that Appendix C, your reading specialist, your math coach, intervention specialist, learning resource teacher, some of those positions. They're not really necessarily on a team or grade level, and I think as we mentioned, they're there to provide a specific service to the students at the school, and so did we want to talk about, considering them, to be a different group. The contract already does have some language about them, but just wondering again, kind of how that fits in to this conversation.
I think I see what you're saying. So let's just say that me, Kerr, and Jill are on a team. Me, Jill, Kerr, and Anna are on a team, and Sam is the reading coach, right? I'm out. The kids from my classroom would be split between Kerr, Jill, and Anna. I couldn't fold Sam. Are you asking if we can fold Sam in to take maybe 7 of the kids, or is that, or cover the whole day? Is that kind of what we're thinking about here?
I think as far as like the team setup, I mean, what you're saying makes sense, but I don't know, and I would maybe defer to Ben or Carl on this, just kind of understanding. My understanding is that a lot of the reading specialists are doing push in, pull out type stuff, and that you might not have a team of, content area specialists or coaches. You might, depending on the school, but I think it's varied. And so if I'm the reading specialist, because we're working on a specific, targeted goal around literacy at my school, and I'm the only one on my team, where do I fit into all of this? And again, that being with the thought that making me a 4th grade teacher might not, work if the goal is for me to provide specific services that, again, as we've all said, are needed based on, the needs of the students at my school.
Anna?
Okay, I think this is where, in my opinion, things start to get confusing when we're talking about 2 different issues. Because we have situations where we have TBAs. On my team, I have a TBA 3rd grade teacher that a resource teacher has been fulfilling. However, we have certain language around if I'm out for 10 days and I have to split my students for 10 days, that's another piece of this. There's also scenarios where a grade level absorbs an entire unit to take on additional students. So I think if we clarified which scenario we want to deal with first, because when we start bringing in the elementary, I think that's where we start to get confused on what topic we are, because I have a resource teacher that is a 3rd grade TBA for further notice, but then I also have resource teachers that are covering classes for a week or 2 because of an absence. Maybe it's just for a day or 2 because of other absences. So I think if we get down to the intent of which issue we want to deal with, craft options around that, because then when we start bringing in the non-instructional, do I think that people taking those TBA classes where they're not doing their job, are eligible for this? Not particularly. But I think that the staff that have been not able to do just their assigned job due to multiple different class coverages, they should also be compensated. So I would like to clarify which scenario we're working on, and then maybe create language or options around that.
Will, can you put up the other document? So what I think, when I look at the document, so it talks about temporary reassignment and then it says the classroom coverage. So I think that right now our goal is to address classroom coverage, or I teach like at the elementary, the split, with the idea that someone is absent. They called in sick or they took a personal day. It's not a vacant position or open position. It's not somebody who's out long-term, like on maternity leave or something like that. We are looking at like really just a day-by-day situation that just happens. And so I feel like when we look at this section, I think if we have temporary assignment, we almost need one subsection that is like class coverage on that temporary concept, and then another section, because we're getting in the weeds again, that would describe like taking over a position when someone is gone. So I just say that because I think that we need to just focus on, I called in sick, what are we doing with my kids? And it doesn't matter if it's, I'm a 3rd grade teacher and Ben's got to split my classes, or I'm a 12th grade teacher and Carl needs to fill 3 slots. That's, I think, what we need to just focus on here. So if we go back to the options and we focus, and this is just what I'm suggesting, that we just focus on someone being absent. If we look back at our options, it's okay. We'll give you all the time you need. Just kidding. I think if we look at our options, really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 address what happens when someone is absent for a day, and I say a day, obviously it could be more, or takes a personal day, and there's not a guest teacher available to fill that daily need. So we're talking like when teachers take on the role of guest teacher. And so when we talk about like splitting evenly, Kevin said, in terms of students and money, but I think that that's where we need to put our attention. And I know, Will, you asked about the non-classroom instructional. Were you asking should they not have to cover, or where they fall into this?
Rob, and then
Yeah, and I'm with Jill, but I think the threshold issue, just like when you file a lawsuit, do you have standing as a party to do that, is eligibility. And I think Kevin was hinting at it when he talked about the teams and the people on the team, and Will responded. So I hate to simplify this, but I think first of all we have to determine, I think we have some consensus relative to the fact that people need to be paid. It's just the question is which people and how. So, I mean, I'm not trying to take this down a different road, but I think we're really down to non-classroom instructional folks. And Will refers to Appendix C, where they're defined, or at least listed, not necessarily defined, as to how I think in the past, if you look at page 41 of the collective bargaining agreement, those are the categories. So I think that's a conversation worth having.
Hey, Will?
And I think Anna kind of said this in terms of like, it might be easier to separate out the classroom instructional from the non-classroom instructional and focus on that group first. That does include ESE resource teachers and some of those, but it doesn't include your math coach, science coach, dean of discipline, behavior specialist. And so I don't know if it's easier to talk about, again, just the classroom instructional group. The other thing, and this is kind of getting ahead a little bit, but I know that one of the questions related to some of the ESSER funding was trying to look at some way to provide some additional compensation to people based on class size overages. And so there was some discussion around that. So I don't know if that kind of helps with what Jill and Anna were talking about in terms of, you know, there's a difference between the unpredictable, today you're going to be doing this, and the everyday you're going to be doing more, in terms of like the disruption, I guess, to your day in and day out work.
I'm really not trying to muddy the waters here, but I think I'm a little confused. Because everyone that's on this list of non-classroom instructional positions still gets a planning period, or planning time, just like everybody else. So if they're missing their planning time and they're serving as the instructor, I don't understand why they wouldn't get paid.
I'm sorry, Will?
I think the situation that I'm thinking of is like if you're the reading specialist and you're acting as the fourth grade teacher, like Anna was saying, you're still getting planning. You're just not doing the work of the reading specialist. You're doing the work of a fourth grade teacher. And so that might be one where again it's not really the loss of planning. It's the I'm being asked to do two jobs, or I'm being excused from doing my main job, but there's still other things that like I have to do to kind of maintain that skill set and stay on top of it for when I go back to doing that, in 3-4 days when whoever's out sick comes back or whatever the scenario is.
Yeah. Kevin?
Thank you. So I think also here we've got the idea of secondary versus elementary. And so like if this is language and we're focusing on the, oh my God, Kevin's out today, what are we doing with his kids? At secondary, that looks like I'm trying to find somebody to plug my classroom 3 holes, right? First period, 2, 4, 6 or 1, 3, 5, 7 or whatever. At the elementary, I'm looking probably not at filling the hole for the day. I'm looking at what do I do with the students that are left in an empty room, because we can't have an empty room. And so it's also 2 different models. And I think and I'm not sure, maybe my elementary people can talk to me about this, but the non-instructional folks that we were talking around the carve out probably don't get, like I said, the team is the 4 of us, and Sam's one of those non-instructional people. I'm out. My 800 kids get divided between Kerr, Jill, and Anna. They don't say, well, Sam's got nothing to do, so we're going to give Sam some of those kids that day. I don't think they do. They may. But at the secondary level, there might be an opportunity in one of the 3 holes that I create as being an absent teacher for them to say, hey, Sam, take second period. And so again, I think as we talk about this further, and for me, it's all about talking it out, because as we look at it further, it might even be like we had the original document dividing up between elementary and secondary. It might be worth having 2 separate examples that reflect what happens, and maybe Ben can talk about that too, related to what happens at his school around the idea that I have to split kids. Do I ever fold in somebody or give somebody something? And then I think, you want to talk, Anna, or should I make Jill's request? Anna's going to make one comment, and she's going to make Jill's request.
I just wanted to clarify if it was the word team, when we talk about that a literacy coach or a reading specialist, some of these non-classroom may not be on the same team. In my mind, and maybe it needs to be clarified better, like a team of people could be providing that coverage. It could be the 2 literacy coaches and the reading specialist are teaming up to provide coverage. Are they assigned to a 3rd grade team? Or, that word team could be used, I think, in many different scenarios around the school sites. And so it was my intent with option 7 was to provide a little bit more flexibility and not limit the amount of people providing coverage. Because when I spoke with my grade level about doing our split list, 3-4 people, they basically said our sanity is a little bit more important. And so we have to take that into consideration, that if a grade level or a school site administrator decides that they're going to split a group of students either amongst an entire grade level, that we weren't limiting that by only having 2, 3, or 4 employees worded in there. So And we also need a in between among and team, among a team. And we need a caucus, please.
Okay. How long do you need for caucus?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. You guys gonna go over to the?
Yeah, we'll go over.
Just want to remind us about our expectations tonight. Are you guys gonna caucus or are you gonna? Okay. caucus. Do you want to give a report out for us?
Yeah, our slightly longer than 5-minute caucus ended up with a very robust discussion around this issue. I think we settled on another option that we can put up, maybe after the caucus report, that deals with elementary. Because of time constraints, we did not get to secondary.
Okay. District, do we have a report out?
Sure. We had a robust, not very robust discussion. And also have an option relative to who would be eligible. But I'll defer to TALC to put their option up first, if they want to do that.
So we're ready to go ahead with putting our option up there. Maybe Will can type it up and also have Amanda take notes as well. We're ready to do that?
Sure.
So I believe this will be option 8.
Yes, I believe so.
All right. Yeah.
All right, so on the elementary side, we're still looking at $400 a day for, as some of our team members like to call it, the backpack of cash. And we've kind of broken it down into two different models. One's a temporary absence, maybe like a call out or a temporary quarantine or something like that. And then we came up with an order of operations by which the administration would determine how to split the class. So the first, under temporary absence, would be the priority is that students are evenly split among classroom and or specials team, and that would be an even distribution of the pay.
Or which team was it?
Classroom and or specials team. So then if that can't happen, the second step would be that the split occurs evenly over non-classroom instructional team. Yeah, and this is, the order of operations here. And then the third item, oh, thank you. Yeah, so the second item here is kind of the push-in model that we have now. So then the third option would be, or item would be if there's an absence of less than 2 hours. So this is temporary coverage. Certified staff would get their hourly rate. So that puts a bow on temporary, and if we look at full coverage, maybe this is a TBA position or maybe long-term absence, FMLA, something like that. These staff members are doing the lesson planning, the grades, oftentimes the instruction as well. They should be paid 2 hours paid planning at their hourly rate per day that they do the full coverage. Elementary. And like I said, we didn't get to secondary, so that's about as far as we got. Did I represent everything correctly, T?
Unless you want to put in push-in model on that side.
Yeah. Will, on the second one, the students evenly split among non-classroom team, can you put parentheses push-in model?
Okay, option 9. So it would potentially read only classroom teachers as listed in Appendix C of the collective bargaining agreement. TALC contract, whatever you want to call it, would be eligible for payment under this provision?
Kevin?
Does that mean people not covered by Appendix C will not be asked?
The option does not say that.
Because that was really the beef among the current language we had, which was, I'm going to ask you, but too bad it doesn't say you're eligible, so too bad you don't get paid.
Hopefully nobody's saying that to the staff member. That would not be appropriate, and we'd like to hear about that if that is being said. But this would only, our option only would make classroom instructional folks eligible.
Comments?
Yeah, so I know sometimes that seems all right to me, but sometimes there are other issues at play here. Like if there are 5 teachers on the team and two of them are out, all of a sudden you're dividing 2 classrooms among the 3 people left. And so I think sometimes for student continuity and student achievement, there may be like in our second idea, and that's what covers that second idea, right? Like we've got a situation where it might be unsafe to split up 2 classrooms among 3 people, or just for continuity of instruction, it might be okay to keep them together. That's where the other person comes in, and I know there are places that do that when the situation arises, they do the push-in model, where the kids stay in my room, and I'm not there. The kids stay in my room, and Kerr, who has another job, gets pushed in. And you know, because again, if you take my kids and yeah, so I think if you limit it, because I don't think personally I'm okay with excluding a group but expecting them to do something without compensation. And so if we're excluding all of those people like we exclude special instructional, then that means that there's a very good chance that the pool of people to which you can move other children is much smaller. And so again, that might get to bigger class stuff. So that's an issue with that idea, I think, for me personally.
Will, Jill, Ben.
So I just had a question again around that non-classroom group, because I know, Kevin, kind of as you were saying, the special instructional group, they all receive supplements in addition to their base pay. So I don't know if there would be an interest in looking at that, or kind of just to throw out there another, maybe looking at, because I think you guys had this in your option, possibility of treating them more along the lines of the way that we do secondary, you know, where it's, you know, you're doing like you were saying, the push, and it's for a limited amount of time. We're not expecting you to cover the class for the whole day. But again, I don't know if that's something that would work on an elementary school level. I would defer to Ben and others.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jill, yes, sorry.
So where it says students split evenly among non-classroom, we meant more for the instructional day to be split, because that's the push-in model means that non-classroom person is going into the classroom. So but I have a clarifying question as I peruse through the contract, where I see supplements. So Will, you said the non-classroom instructional all receive a supplement? Because I don't, special instructional, so we're talking just okay. Because this is more about non-classroom instructional doing the push-in. Okay, just making sure I heard you correctly. I thought you said non-classroom, because I was like, wait a second.
Jill may have covered it. I just want to make sure I understood. The push-in model was you would take your, for example, your reading coach, maybe an academic coach, your math coach, and they would each do an hour or 2 throughout the day in that classroom.
It's a coverage split. Coverage split among students.
Will, can we change that option to say instructional day? Where it says students split evenly among non-classroom, I think, yeah, like that doesn't capture what we really meant. It's more the instructional day, like what the example Ben just gave is the instructional day being divided among 3 people and they go into one classroom. The children aren't split.
The coverage is split.
I don't see it up there, but I assume, because it's not listed as an option, which is our elementary language relative to $300 a day. Yeah. Well, that's not in the contract, right, Will?
Oh, it's in the MOU, okay.
That's what I'm saying. That draft language, at least for the elementary schools, for the district, needs to be an option.
Option 10. So $300 a day for elementary.
I want to make sure I understand. Is it you, Kurt?
Go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. So on, we'll call it bullet C, absence of less than 2 hours. So I want to make sure I understand the difference between B and C. If I have 3 or 4 teachers that push in, non-classroom teachers that push in, I get the absence is over 2 hours, but the teachers are pushing in for maybe less than 2 hours. Are they splitting the 300 or are they getting their hourly rate in that situation?
I'm going to let Jill answer the question.
Okay.
So A, under elementary teacher, like if we divide that into, say, options A and B, when we look at A and B, that means that a teacher is they're absent the whole day, like they called in sick or took a personal day. When we look at the third one, absence of less than 2 hours, that would mean, like, let's just say, for example, I'm coming late to work because of a medical appointment, or I have an emergency on my way to work, and now I'm going to be late. What we talked about on our caucus was that at the secondary level, if I was late to work and I had to cover a class, so I'm late to work and Kevin now has to cover my class for an hour that I'm late, he would be compensated for that. But at the elementary, there's not a mechanism to do that, and we're trying to make it so that if you are taking on the responsibility of a teacher in a temporary situation, whether someone is late to work or they're absent for the whole day, that it's equitable. So again, if, like I said, if at the secondary level, someone's late to work and they're an hour late, someone has to cover their class, that person is paid. But at the elementary, if someone's an hour late and their kids are split up, as you know, there's not compensation for that. So we were thinking in that situation, we're trying to make it equitable so that people are paid. Also, that would talk about covering specials teachers, when specials teachers have to cover. and they don't do a whole day. Did that answer your?
Yes, it did. So B and C it's more about the teacher absence as opposed to the coverage that's being provided.
Yes, that would be correct.
So that I make sure I have my numbers right, we were going to do a straw design, option, I guess 10, 8, and I'd have to see the numbers again, but I believe 4.
We have a strong built right now, we'll get those, waiting on to verify those numbers, which has the next 10, 8, and 4. I know we do. So,
only special. That's what they're saying. That's option. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so up here on the board, we have 10, 8, and 4. So 10 would be the draft MOU language in 1A. 8 are these non-bulleted bullet points. And for elementary, between temporary and full coverage. And 4 is to increase the absence from $300 a day to $400 a day. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
And I think Kirby had covered this in his recap of the caucus, but there's nothing in there for high school. I mean, that's purposeful. Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, so this will just be for the 1A part, the elementary part. Okay, any other discussion, Jill?
And I just want to clarify that when we drafted option 8, we looked at it the way that coverage is mapped out for secondary, where it says first you seek volunteers. If you can't find volunteers, then it's assigned. So the idea behind those bullets is first it gets split up among grade level, or if, you know, whatever grade level is closest. Like I know a 4th grade student could be in a 5th grade classroom. And then if that doesn't work, then you go to the non-classroom push-in model. So I just wanted to clarify that there is we wanted some mirror language for secondary.
Okay. Rob? The straw design is 10, 10, 8, and 4. And back to the question?
First, we go to the grade level. If they don't, we have to go to B. We're not necessarily asking anymore. We're just at that point we're working our way through, and so we've got to find someone that can cover at this point. And so we have 3 resource teachers, or not 3 teachers that can cover. And so the expectation is that to help, so they're not stuck giving up their entire day, that all 3 of them would take a piece of that. Is that the expectation?
So here's the thing, like, and my elementary people are saying yes. You can still technically, depending on the amount of non-classroom, you can still ask for volunteers. We just, at the secondary level, it says first you look for volunteers, and if you can't get a volunteer, you assign. And so what we were looking at was trying to develop a streamlined system for which coverage would be provided in elementary, because at some schools, the first is we just divide them among the team, right? But then at other schools, it always falls on the non-classroom instructional. And so the struggle that teachers are seeing now is their students are not receiving the support services that some non-classroom instructional provide. And so when we look at the big picture, first, if the children are divided up, and you guys know I'm not an elementary teacher, but if the children are divided up among their grade level or the grade level closest, because we don't want to put kindergartners in with fifth graders, okay? Then the kids are still receiving, hopefully, the level of instruction that they should be getting. But if there's not, like again, we have too many people out or you can't split, then we would go to those non-classroom instructional second. Because what's happening, like I said, in some schools, the model's not the same. It's not streamlined among all our elementaries. And I think Anna can elaborate on this a little more. Students are not receiving the instructional support that they're supposed to get because those non-classroom teachers are constantly just being filling in for temporary absences.
So B becomes assigned, and the goal is to try to split among more than one and not have it be one teacher. So that way they can still do some of the other functions of their job. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to point out that, and I think you all know this, but the source of the $300 a day, and I'm looking at number 4 up there, was essentially 6 hours of students, $50 an hour. So I guess my question is, how did TALC arrive at $400 a day? That's fine.
Because based on what everyone is doing in their regular day and then being asked to do on top of that, we felt that that was more equitable.
And I think also when you look at kind of that amount, again, it's like what Bob spoke about the other day with the experienced teachers. It's far more profitable for people with the base salary, because base salary is around $37 an hour, I think, give or take, or 32, something like that. Right around there, but you know, Mr. Scapitulo over there is a little closer to the 50. So the 50 an hour. So you know, again, it's some people may look at it and say, you know, it's not necessarily worth it to do. And so, you know, and again, we didn't know it was 50 times 6, so we also didn't know where the number came from.
We have a straw design up here, already created, 10, 8, and 4. Jill, did you want to test this, or? I think, sorry, Rob looks like he's about to.
Rob looked like he's about ready to say something.
It's 10, right? They said 10?
Yeah.
But 10 includes the $300 language, so that's why I'm confused.
300 and make it 400.
So your straw design is actually the language in 1A with the exception of the $300.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to start somewhere, so it's...
No. Before you say let's test something, I mean, we need to be clear that you're not talking about all of the draft language in 1A.
No, I mean, you kind of threw me off by adding the draft language as option 10, because then we could have kind of worked from there. But it was the concept, you know, of option, of the original option with those changes there. Is the, and I'm just trying to wrap my mind around like option 8, a couple of pieces. So absences of less than 2 hours, certified staff, that would be classroom and non-classroom? Yes. Okay. And then for the full coverage, 2 hours paid planning per day of coverage, is that in addition to the other piece, or that's separate, that's what you get? And then I'm wondering just how we determine what full coverage is and when it goes from providing 12 weeks of coverage because someone's on FMLA or someone's out for medical leave, or it's an indeterminate amount of time and it goes longer, like where do we make that decision? And I know that's more of an implementation thing, I'm just trying to think ahead.
So when we discussed full coverage, we looked at it like one teacher is taking on the responsibility of another teacher's job duties. So whether it's you're doing all the planning and all the grading and you're also the person in the room, but we looked at it like, so that could be a TVA position, that could be a person out on long-term leave, like someone's out on maternity leave, someone's out on FMLA. The idea is that someone else is doing either 100% of the job duties of the teacher that is not there, or the majority of the job duties of the teacher that are not there.
Yeah, Mike had his hand up too. I'm just trying to look at the interests because I suspect manageability is one of the interests here, and 8, and I need Ben to chime in or other school building folks, but I'm not sure how manageable that may or may not be. There's a lot of stuff in there to keep track of, it appears.
My question is, the 2 hours paid planning is in addition to the $400 per day?
No, just that. Okay. Jill?
I just want to comment on the manageability of 8. So if you take a look at the contract on page 41, okay, so under 4, instruction, mystery, and planning, where it says voluntary assignment, so this is volunteers will be sought and a rotation schedule will be followed. The building principal shall maintain a list. But so that's the goal of 8. So is to just put like a process in, like, so first we do this, and if we can't do this, then we do that. It's no different than at the high school where the first thing is whoever's responsible for coverage sends an email. These are the teachers out, these are the periods that need coverage, and they look for volunteers, people to respond to that email or to call and say, I'll take that period. But if they can't find someone to cover that class, then there's every school should have a list of teachers on planning that period, whatever period it is, and there should be a process for which teachers are then assigned coverage. And so the goal here is to say, first thing we want to do is split them among their grade level or the closest grade level. But if that can't happen, that's the next thing. It's no different than at the secondary level, seeking volunteers to fill holes and then assigning coverage when there's no volunteers.
Just a question about C. Is this, I get the 2 hour, this is an actual entered 2 hours, like absence, or this is like, at what point is it, I'm running 30 minutes late, are we then trying to provide
Well, I get anything less than 2 hours, but like, are we getting more at, like, this is a reasonable amount of time? Or is this just I'm running 30 minutes late, so now we need to do the calculation and figure out what that looks like for any time someone may or may not leave early, because I think right now we just kind of work that out, but I get 2 hours becomes substantial, but what do we mean by anything less than 2 hours?
Anna? Carol's gonna go.
So we didn't put in a minimum time, but again, I think that's something that we need to look at the high school. Like, our goal here again is, if at the high school, if I had to cover a class for 45 minutes because a teacher was late and I covered during my planning, I would be compensated for that time. And so our goal is to make it so that if teachers are covering classes or taking on additional students for a period of time, that they are adequately paid for that, and to make that equitable in our K-12 system. So I don't know, Will would have to tell me more about that, but I don't know at what point we pay people. I know that we can technically pay in increments of 15 minutes, but that does seem kind of tough, but I don't know, that's a question for Will.
Will and then Hannah?
So and that's kind of what gives me angst about those two portions is I think it's tough to manage, not just in terms of like figuring out the math. I think that part's easy. It's applying it to every single different scenario where it's going to come up and making sure that it's being done consistently across the district. I think a couple of the scenarios, and I know you guys talked about the backpack full of cash scenario. The other one that I've heard more recently was, people talking about friendly coverage and candy bar coverage, which was by the time I put the paperwork in and you divide it up, you owe me a king-size candy bar. And so is it really worth it to bring paper into the transaction, or should I, agree to do it to help someone out and hope that I get a candy bar in exchange? And I think that's more of the situations like Ben is talking about, where someone's running a few minutes late, or someone's got to go to their kid's doctor's appointment, and so you've got 3 kids for 15 minutes at the end of the day. I guess what I wanted to see was maybe put up another option that splits option 8 and just has the first 2 under the temporary part. Because I think that third part might be something that we end up talking about in labor management anyway. And so I think it might be easier if we said, in any case where that's an issue, please refer it to labor management. And then the full coverage, I think some of that comes into the larger class size conversation that we were talking about. So I wasn't sure if that could be separated out, because the first 2 pieces I think are very manageable, and the way that you guys did the non-classroom team, I think makes sense and would be easy to communicate.
With Hannah and then Kevin? Omar?
Well, I think Will had an option. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Do you want to put on it for an option?
Yeah.
You're looking at the language up here then?
The other thing is it's 10:07, so I don't want Bob to miss one pitch of the Red Sox game.
That is true. So option, is it option? All right, Anna?
So I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on the absence of less than 2 hours. we have at our school site different special rotations. So like our behavior specialist had 2 grade levels that he would provide, social skills special. So when he was out, we had 2 different employees, our guidance counselor and our dean of students, were rotating through covering his special area allotted time, which was a less than 2-hour mark. So when we look at the draft MOU, thinking of how do we capture those teachers that were providing a less than 2-hour coverage that isn't just I'm running late, I have a doctor's appointment, something outside of that. Like our MTSS specialist, she also provides 2 science specials to 2 of the grade levels, that if she was out, we still have to. We have other people in our building that provide specials to different grade levels. It doesn't look the same for each grade level. So when they're out, we still have to pull somebody in to do that coverage. So it's just taking that hourly rate of that additional coverage. So it's not just, when we had our conversation, it wasn't just the I'm running late conversation.
Kevin? I can just kind of put one.
Go ahead, Bob.
So in the examples you just gave, because I think what we're trying to find is there needs to be a floor, I think is the conversation. So in the examples you just gave, how long are these? Like, are they 30 minutes, are they 45 minutes, are they like?
So we have a 50-minute special time.
Okay.
So they are providing a 50-minute coverage. And it was, our behavior specialist, unfortunately, is not coming back. And so it has been a lengthy time period that we are in the midst of a special rotation that these employees are now covering a position that is no longer there. So it wasn't, I just wanted to make sure that we were capturing some of the other side of that conversation, that it's not just hey, I'm running late, can you cover for me? We were looking at the language in the draft MOU where that 2-hour threshold really was a concern, and what other positions were not being captured by that 2-hour mark threshold.
And so I think to Ben's point about, I'm running a little late. Yeah, I'm not an elementary school person either, by choice, thankfully, but I think, maybe if we flipped it, right? And maybe if I'm gonna be an hour late because I've had an emergency or I needed to go to a doctor, we work the push-in model first, right? Because I can't think of anything that would be more disorganized and more maybe chaotic to a school and an elementary school student's day than I'm gonna be an hour late, but my kids have to be split between 4 different classrooms. And then 45 minutes later, I show up and we pull them all back. I've probably lost the better half of the morning, both in them in other rooms and me getting them back once I've gotten them. So maybe when we're dealing with late, it's the push-in model first, and you have the ability to have somebody who doesn't necessarily have classroom responsibilities go in there and cover for the hour or the hour and a half that somebody's gonna be late. And then because that's how, I got my career at Tice 100 years ago. My aunt said, wake up every morning, there'll always be a spot at Tice. And so they would call and I would rush over to Tice, and that was what was happening, is they would have put somebody in the room kind of to cover until I got there, gave me 10 minutes to kind of look at the plans and stuff and then engage. So maybe on the late stuff, maybe we do the push-in model first as the first choice, because that makes the most sense from the student and the school perspective, and I think we want to be as least disruptive as we can to the student in the school day, but while still meeting the needs of the kids there.
So just for the 2-hour piece, I think that was what was in the MOU. That's kind of the threshold for paraprofessionals who are providing coverage. I don't know that anyone's looking at it and saying it has to be exactly 120 minutes. I would hope that, if you're close to that you're being given the benefit of the doubt. But I just wanted to raise that piece. The other, and this is totally off topic, but just a housekeeping item. We did send the minutes from the first bargaining session out via email. We'll do that with the other one too. And if everyone's okay with it, we can try and approve via email so that we can get them up onto the website as soon as possible.
Kevin? We are at 6:57.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for clarifying that piece, because I was wondering if we were talking about kind of still trying to split kids up, not only a lot, but then also are we splitting up among 4 teachers and then we're paying teachers for picking up 6 kids, their hourly, on top of that. So really the intent was one teacher would kind of absorb, and I think Anna's situation was the same, that you're actually teaching 18 or 20 kids, not just taking up 4 or 5 and at that point.
The only problem I have with like the attitude that, and I'm gonna again go back to kind of what Carl says sometimes is we, legislate for the extremes, is that we wrote down 2 hours. And 2 hours is what is in black and white. And so 2 hours is what some administrators will do because that's what it says, no matter what common sense tells you otherwise. And so that's my concern about like having that minimum threshold, and I'm wondering if, and I spoke to Jamie a little bit today, I just don't know if some administrators are fiddling with the 2-hour rule, or if they have to be in there for 2 hours. That may be part of the spout deal too, is it's a minimum of 2, but they've gotta be in there for 2. I just know if we put 2 down on paper, there may be some people who say, I got an hour and a half and that ain't 2, so, good luck.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you, and I think that's one of the challenges with implementation and kind of management of this, and I think that the thought behind 2 hours is 2 hours is clearly reasonable. At that point, it has disrupted your day, but I agree with you. I think if we're getting into the situation where, am I doing 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, as I'm counting those 2 hours and you're not, and so we end up with different numbers and that kind of stuff. That's where I think, again, being able to kick it to TALC labor management, hopefully reasonable minds will prevail and people will figure it out without having to bring it to us. But it would leave that option available in case you have someone who, oh, that's an hour and 59 minutes and 30 seconds, and so you don't get the pay.
I know we have to go. I just wanted, I mentioned to Will that even if we can't get minutes out quickly, we can get these options to everybody. So I just wanted to touch base there, and it's 6:59, so.
All right, it is 6:59. One of our norms is to begin and end on time. So are we good if we do a quick 5 to 5? Just everybody show me where you at with where our expectations for tonight. 1 is we did meet them, 5 is we met them, and
5 is good. 5 is good, right?
5 is excellent. Okay. Very good. Yes, thank you. All right, thank you all. Happy birthday, Jill. Sorry to get early for you.
Thank you, facilitators and everybody else that helped out. Thank you.